So, today on World Traveler Commentary, I'm going to talk about the assassination attempt on Alexander Dugin that claimed the life of his daughter. Like many of the episodes here, the focus isn't really just what happened and why, but there's a focus on trying to understand each other in terms of perceptions and things like that, as well as trying to understand where things are going after an event like this. Now, I think it's fairly clear to most people that this was an assassination attempt that was politically motivated, largely because of Dugin's public support for the Kremlin and public support for the Russian doctrine of sovereign democracy, as well as Eurasianism, some of his anti-West tendencies and things like that. In this particular episode, I'm not going to talk about my agreements or disagreements with Dugin. Those really aren't the point. All I can say is that, at least from what I've seen, I have plenty to agree with and plenty to disagree with. Like most people, he's right about some things and wrong about others. But what I think is important to recognize at this point is what role Dugin's played kind of in relation to the structuring of Russian philosophy of state, and what this role is likely, or what the implications of this assassination attempt are likely to be played out across Europe, the United States, Australia, New Zealand, and so forth. So first, we have to understand that Russia went through a dramatic shift in the philosophy of state after Yeltsin stepped down. Now, the first part of that, the first years of Putin, were relatively formless when it comes to a philosophy of state. Putin seems to have taken a strong role, a strong stand against the oligarchs, which Yeltsin had basically sold off the country to at pennies. Well, I mean, it's not even pennies on the dollar, it's like micro pennies on the dollar too. It's also the fact that Putin, during this first term in office, was quite conciliatory towards NATO, especially compared to Yeltsin. And basically there was this period of trying to figure things out in Russia. And then Putin stepped down, and Medvedev came in, and immediately there were a number of crises, and these included, of course, the crises of 2008 when it came to questions of further NATO expansion to include Ukraine and Georgia. But it included some other things as well. And what Medvedev did was he went out and he got a bunch of other philosophers together, and the outcome of this was the Russian doctrine of sovereign democracy. Now, sovereign democracy is an overall framework that was put together, I think, by Sergei Surov, which outlines sort of a non-liberal basis for democracy. It's closer to an Aristotelian society, and in this regard I have a lot of sympathy for it, than it is a Western liberal view. But I think most people would probably recognize that Russia is not there yet in terms of implementing sort of a shared prosperity for all nations within Russia at home. So I don't really want to talk too much about sovereign democracy as an idea here. That may come in at another episode, but what's really happened is, well, basically where Dugin comes into this is that Dugin has been basically the front person for explaining these ideas, particularly to Western countries. And so Dugin, to a large extent, popularized Eurasianism and some aspects of sovereign democracy at home in Russia. His works were then translated into English and other areas, and he's become very influential within certain national conservative movements throughout Europe, United States, Australia, and New Zealand. Again, I'm not going into where I agree, where I disagree with the man. I'm just trying to go over the political implications here. So, my first thought on seeing the news on this is that there are going to be implications, and they're probably not going to be very pretty. Dugin is somebody who has been quite influential in the rise of many right-wing organizations around the West. And at a time when there is failing confidence in our public institutions, partly out of COVID, partly out of the economic fallout from this war is disproportionately hitting lower income individuals. I think there's a very, very, very strong danger that Dugin will have something of a quasi-martyr status of basically having lost his daughter to a Western attack. And I think that this is very much likely to galvanize associated right-wing movements throughout Europe, US, and so forth. And on top of this, what you see is in many quarters, you see the same sort of gloating that we saw with Hillary Clinton. You know, we saw he died comment about Gaddafi. We see a case in the United States in particular where people who are right of center feel like they are being politically persecuted. And I don't think there's much argument against the fact that they are being politically persecuted. And I say they because I don't count myself among them. So what I actually really fear from this is that these sorts of actions are going to add a lot more relevance to Dugin's writings. They're going to add a lot more popularity to his writings. They're going to galvanize certain political movements across the West. And I'm actually significantly afraid about where that's going to lead. And finally, I do want to point out that the sort of gloating over people's death, which we've seen, Madeleine Albright's comment about 500,000 dead Iraqi children being worth it. Hillary Clinton's comment about, we saw he died, and laughing about it. You can understand how people can be so caught up that they can react positively at the news of somebody's death. But oftentimes we don't really grasp what's at stake. And the thing about this is the people who are gloating aren't even saying anything bad about the person who died, right? It's just like, oh yeah, we killed somebody close to somebody we don't like. And there's something really ugly about that. And it's something that isn't going to be lost on as many people as the folks doing the gloating think. So personally, I kind of wish Dugin would be fading into irrelevance. I think there are plenty more interesting philosophers about the state in the West. I'm not going to get into who at this point, because these are topics that get very easily and quickly misunderstood. But gloating over killing somebody's family member is really pretty low. We don't like him, he killed his daughter. And nothing good will come of that. So that's what I have for you today. Talk later. Hope you have a great day. Bye.